right, 1-5. We do have 3 people out, so we need this to be a quality video. We're looking at picking up where we left off yesterday. We were working with word problems. Here's where we left off right here. Remember we talked about with these word problems, read it one time to get an idea of what you're talking about, then read it a second time, where you take notes over the word problem, you mark out the unnecessary info, you circle or underline whatever you need. Then you have to assign variables. We are at the point where you are having to create your own variables so that you can write the equation and then solve. However many variables you have usually dictates how many equations you have, because you can't have one equation with 2 variables and get anywhere. You would need a second equation in order to solve. So let's look at this one right here. This one involves the formula for motion. The distance traveled would be found by taking the rate or speed and multiplying by the time spent traveling that distance. Delta Airlines fleet includes B-737s, each with a cruising speed of 517 miles per hour, and a Saab 340Bs, each with a cruising speed of 290 miles per hour. Here's our source. Suppose that a Saab 340B takes off and travels at its cruising speed. 1 hour later, a B-737 takes off and follows the same route. Traveling at its cruising speed, how long will it take the B-737 to overtake the Saab 340B? I know you don't care how long it's going to take, but we do have to solve it. The good news is they gave you a picture, but I would like you to ignore the picture at first, and let's go back and read through a second time slower, marking out stuff. Also, assigning a variable immediately so that we can read the problem and understand it better. Delta Airlines fleet includes B-737/800s. Wouldn't it be a lot easier to just call that plane A? Right? You got a Delta Airlines fleet, they have plane A. You with me? It does not matter what size the plane is. What matters is the numbers they gave us in terms of the time it took off and the distance it traveled. It does have a cruising speed of 517 miles per hour. So let's make a note. Plane A goes 517 miles per hour. And Saab 340Bs, what do you think I'm going to call that?
B.
Yeah, I'm going to call that plane B. Each with a cruising speed of 290 miles per hour. I don't care about the source, and I'm going to come down here and say to myself, okay, you got plane B that goes 290 miles per hour. Suppose that the Saab, which one was that? B, takes off and travels at its cruising speed 1 hour later. Which one's this? Plane A takes off and follows the same route, reaches its cruising speed. How long will it take? What does this imply to find? How long will it take is telling you to find T. This means find T. The B-737, that was A, to overtake plane B. To help with the visual, what do they mean by overtake? Passive. So we want to know when they, there you go, when they're lined up together, because any time after that is when plane B would pass plane A. Does that make sense? So if we're looking for when, so you got plane B takes off first, plane A takes off and then reaches it, and then passes it. We want to know when does it reach it So we're looking for when their two distances are the same, right? When plane A has reached plane B's distance, because they're at the same distance from where they took off. Does that make sense? Okay, looking at the motion formula, distance equals rate times time. So plane A is going how fast? 517. So its distance would be 517 multiplied by t. What would the distance formula for plane B look like? Okay, we need to tweak it though. It is. Keep going. All right, so here, let me give you some hints. I'm walking your view. I never know where to stand.
I think you're all
T plus 1.
I am. Thanks.
Well, I'm just saying, don't worry about it.
That's why I'm constantly moving it. My steps go crazy in this class. Do you need a paper towel?
What?
So, plane B is taking off. An hour later, plane A takes off. What? Why?
Because you have to add an hour.
There you go. Okay, so plane B takes off first. I got you. Plane B takes off first, correct?
Yeah.
An hour later, plane A takes off. How much more time in the air has plane B got on top of A? 1 more hour. So right here, I'm going to put t plus 1 because it's the time in the air, but the 1, and if you need to, make a note to yourself, they had a 1 hour head start. Now we're looking for where they are. Would we say you got one took off, the other one took off, but it goes faster? We're looking for where they're equal to each other. Well, what do you notice both of these equal? So we can just set them equal to each other. So you might want to make a note to yourself. Set them equal since they both equal D. Because they both equal D, you can take D out and just put the two expressions equal to each other. That's called the transitive property, meaning if 1 equals 2 and 2 equals 3, then 1 equals 3. The transitive property. Or it's also called substitution. All right, so we're going to set it up. We got 517t equals 290, 1 plus t. We're going to solve this. You will get a decimal. You're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So solve it. Transpose my 1. I did that yesterday. 1.28 an appropriate answer?
Yes.
Is 1.28 an appropriate answer?
No. No.
Mathematically, it's the right answer, but in terms of the problem, is it the appropriate answer? So a lot of times people think the decimal refers to how many minutes, which is a very common mistake. The whole part refers to hours, so it's definitely 1 hour. But then I need you to look at the decimal part and relate it to percent. We want it not of an hour necessarily, we want it of 60 minutes because we know it's not an entire hour. So you're going to relate the decimal to 28% of 60 minutes. Now find that and you can say, okay, it took an hour and minutes. You would just multiply 60 times 0.28. And what'd you get? Yeah, I'm just going to go with the nearest minute. So 16 minutes.
No, you 17. It's 16.8.
Well, if we're talking about
If you were asking.
if you're doing the rounding rules, yes, it would be 17 minutes. But if we're talking about where the plane is when they're equal, at 1 hour 17 minutes, won't the plane already start surpassing?
But then 1 hour 16 minutes.
They're going to be equal.
So behind it.
They're going to be equal.
It's 16.8.
So it's
16.8 came from where they're equal, though.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
The question.
Write down 16 minutes.
No, I mean, I will write down 16 minutes, but like 16.8 is where they would line up perfectly.
Just write down 16 or 17, whatever floats your boat.
Not gonna are floating.
We're flying airplanes this time. whatever puts the plane in the air, right?
I don't think we
Yeah, and I think on my math lab they will specify strictly what they want you to round to. For this particular problem, since we're not in my math lab, it's at the discretion of just what we want to go with as a class. Since it was the 16 minutes for sure, I'm rounding to 16. Since it didn't have an additional full 60 seconds to say 17 minutes. Before you change slides, I need to talk to you real quick. First of all, you might want to make a note on this slide and say number 7 in my math lab. Your number 7 in your homework assignment is going to direct you right back to this slide for help, okay? Number 7. You're going to want to look at this slide to help you with number 7. Let me also ask you, if I had said, I'm going to rephrase this, right? If I said plane A takes off and reaches its cruising speed, plane B took off an hour earlier and reached its cruising speed, what did I change there? I changed the word from saying that the plane was in the air an hour later to I said the plane was in the air an hour earlier. So you have to be careful there. Whichever one they're talking about doesn't necessarily mean that's the plane that was in the air the longest. So when you're reading these word problems, ask yourself, read it, look at it, assign a variable so you can just say A or B, and then that's easier. But then ask yourself, which one was in the air longer? If I say plane B took off, and then I say plane A took off an hour earlier, which one's been in the air longer? A. A's been in the air longer, so A would be the one you would add the extra hour to. You see what I mean? So be careful when you're reading that, because it happens in your My Math lab. Number 7. All right? Go to this slide. Simple interest. Simple interest, no compound, just simple interest. That is an I, by the way. It looks like a 1, but that's an I. I equals PRT. P represents your principal, right? principal amount, meaning the starting amount. How much you originally put in the bank, or how much you originally took out, or whatever. Interest rate is R. You need to remember R needs to be in decimal form. And T is time. Ooh, student loans. It's a great problem. If you're going to college, I strongly encourage you to sign up for as many scholarships as you can. Because sometimes people get scholarships by default because no one else applied for them. So you never know what kind of money you can get by just applying. Yes. No, I give them to you.
Good.
You're gonna know.
So much.
You're gonna know. I'll give it to you this Friday. So going into the weekend, you can study, and you already know what formulas you will be given, and what you need to have memorized. But I'm pretty sure I give most of them. Are any of you going to college to be a teacher?
Falcon.
Okay. Yeah? Was there any more? Yes? If you're going to college to be a teacher, the reason I say that is because there's a teacher forgiveness loan program where you take out the loan, they pay for your degree, and then after you graduate, you have to teach in a low socioeconomic status school for so many years, and they will forgive your loan because you've become, it's like paying back your service to the public. There's also a teach grant. A teach grant means you don't have to pay it back at all. So look into those. That is how I funded my master's degree because I was determined to not pay for it. So look at that. That's a really good option for teachers. And I'm having to pay for my EDS degree, so if anybody has any spare change, I'm glad. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. I would never do that. All right, Demarian's 2 student loans total $28,000. One loan is at 5% simple interest. The other is at 3% simple interest. After 1 year, Demarian owes $1,000 in interest. Well, what was the amount of each loan? Is there any fluff in this problem? Not really. So unfortunately, we don't get to strike anything out, but we can read it once again, and we can assign variables and take notes. How many loans did he take out?
2.
There's your 2 variables. I'm just going to say X and Y because there's really nothing else. I don't want to call one L1 and one L2 because I might get confused. So I'm going to let X equal the first loan and Y equal the second loan. Now we need to quantify that. It says one loan is at what? 5%. So I'm going to put 5% here. And the other is at 3%. Did they give us the time?
After 1 year.
There's your T. I gave you your time. If they gave you time, the equation, if you look up here, and honestly I didn't even use the equation necessarily, but this equation does get used in another problem, but it's the same concept. Since our time is only 1 year, does the 1 really change anything when I start multiplying? No. We said that your rate needs to be in what form? So it might be a good idea to go ahead and translate that. Mine says at 5%. I'm just going to put in parentheses. That would be 0.05. 3% would be 0.03. You don't want to use the 5 and the 3. You want to use 0.05, 0.03. We can write 2 equations here. This is a lot like the slide we did yesterday. See if you can write the quantity equation. Remember we said quantity refers to your total. If you're nervous you're wrong, then don't write it. Just think about it in your head. I'll give you 30 seconds. Think of an equation to represent the total scenario of this problem. Did you come up with x plus y equals 28,000? Because that is saying, hey, there's the first loan that I took out, the second loan I took out. This is what it totaled to. Notice the rate, the percent, has nothing to do with the quantity equation. This is just saying block of money, and I took out 28,000 total. Now the quality is going to take into account what? Your interest rate. What do we know from the problem? We know the total amount of interest is $1,000. So this equation is going to come into play here. But how many loans do we have? We have 2. So we're going to actually have 2 of these. We're going to have one for the first loan plus one for the second loan, and they total to $1,000 in interest. So let me write this down. Y'all probably want it the other direction. All right. So we know it totals to $1,040, and I'm going to make note that this is interest. Where did the interest come from? It came from P, meaning how much you took out. We don't know, X, right? P, how much you took out. R is the rate. That would be 0.05. And T is the 1. Now I'm just writing it all there so you know where what I'm about to write, which is 0.05x, where you know where it came from. Now let's keep going. Y was at what percent? 3. Aha. It's not going to let me. I'm just going to have to write really small. No, I can't do it. My OCD. I got to move this down. Hold on.
Just finish the equation.
I am. I'm working on it. There you go. I had to move it down. All right, so here's where it came from. The first loan was at 5%, and it was for a year. The second loan was at 3%. It was for a year. The sum of those interest values we know totals to $1,040. Now I'm going to clean it up because that is lots of unnecessary stuff. See it? So we have 2 equations. We have our quantity, which is your total. We have our quality, which takes into account the rate. Now, looking at the 2 equations, you want to focus your attention here and here. Remember, this one was a formality. Focus your attention on those 2. What technique in solving a system of equations would work best here? Substitution. I would definitely use equation 1 and just pick a variable to get by itself. Write that expression in equation 2, solve, then go back and finish. So it's going to help to label here. I'm going to change colors and label this 1, this 2. I'm going to take 1, I'm going to make a note to myself, I'm coming over here. I'm just going to subtract the y to the right. Notice now I have x by itself. You see that? Bear with me. And now I'm going to use my highlighter to show you my plan. Where I see x in equation 2, I'm going to put 28,000 minus y, because then I will have an equation with just y's in it and I can solve it. You see that? The goal is basically you're weaving them together into one equation with one variable so you can solve. Then you take that and go and finish for the other variable. The only time you're going to mess up is if you take equation 1, solve it for a variable, but then plug it back into equation 1. You can't do that. That's like using a word in its own definition. You can't do that. So you'll end up in a loop. You'll be stuck. That's why it helps to label and say, okay, I'm going to work with 1. I've got it. Now I'm going to plug it into 2, get an answer, then I can finish for the variable that's left. So let's plug it in. I'm going to move this over here. All right, solve it. The numbers are really big, I get it, but remember we're talking money. You took out 28,000 total. They should both be negative, so when you divide, it's positive when you're solving for y. If you go the same way I did. Did you get 18,000? So I distributed the 0.05 to the 28,000, which gave me 1,400. And then to the negative y, which gave me negative 0.05y. Then I combined my terms with the y's. Then I subtracted 1,400 to the right, which is why there's negative. And then divided by negative 0.02. Yeah, so now we have y, which means we know one of the loans was 18 grand. Which equation would be smarter to plug it into?
Who knows?
The first one. You know it has to add to 28,000. So we have the 18 grand was at what percent? Sorry. Look at your labels. Y was the second one, so it's at 3%. And 10 grand would be at 5%. I should show y'all the loan statement for my specialist so you can get an idea, like, because that's the math you need. Oh. Now, if those had not been convenient numbers that I can do in my head, then I technically would have plugged the 18 back in right here and subtracted it to get the answer for the other one. All right, let's do the next one. Yeah. No, I meant next slide. No, I meant next slide.
Raise y equals
Yes. If they asked the amount, so they just want the amount of each loan. If they wanted the amount of interest from each loan, then you would need to find that. I do know on my math lab, when you have these word problems, it's going to give you the open boxes for both variables, and they're going to be specific. Like you'll have, just like what we just did, you're going to have to say like the 18,000, and then you fill in was 3%. The 10,000, and then you fill it in 5%. All right, let's look at the next one. Solar panels. I'm going to let you read it. I don't want to read it. You read it, then mark out what's not necessary. Do we care what month and year? No. Sometimes you do, but not in this problem. A solar energy farm was completed at the Denver International Airport. The only purpose of that sentence is to let you know we're talking about solar panels on an energy farm. Is there anything from that sentence that's going to actually get used in my problem? No. So you read that just to know, okay, I'm talking about solar panels, I'm out at the farm. But as far as getting data from that sentence, it's not necessary. More than 9,200 rectangular solar panels. That's really helpful. Were installed. Do we care who said so? No. That's great. Sounds good. A solar panel, or photovoltaic panel, converts sunlight into electricity.
No.
Nobody, I mean, I care. I'm not trying to sound like I don't care, but yeah, nobody cares. I don't care. That's great. There's a reason I don't work with that. All right, the length of a panel is 13.6 inches, less than twice the width, and the perimeter is 207.4 inches. Find the length and the width. This is a good old-fashioned rectangle problem that has been masked underneath solar panels. So what should we draw?
A rectangle.
Oh, let's draw a
It's
rectangle.
already drawn.
What?
We don't care.
You know, rectangle, a block one.
He doesn't.
You can't read it very well though.
Oh yeah,
It
it tells us the equation.
It says 2W minus 13.6
plus W equals perimeter.
How does yours have that and mine doesn't, and I type these? Please fold the corner.
I already saw it.
What do you get?
Well, quit looking.
I already know. You got it.
I can't even read it.
All right, good, good. Let's look right here. We know what a rectangle looks like, and what are the basic properties of a rectangle?
Length and width.
Size.
Yes, 4 sides. We got length and width. What else? Something else. What about the sides?
The two that are equal and the other two are equal.
And where are the two that are equal? They're always opposite, and they are parallel. But so the opposite sides are equal. visual. They did tell us the length of a panel is 13.6 inches less than twice the width, and they told us the perimeter is 207. And then they asked us to find the length and width. Well, what do you think that's going to represent?
L and W.
L and W. I do make my L in a lowercase cursive so it doesn't look like a 1.
I'm just writing like an L. Big old L7.
Last Saturday. Like last Saturday? Yeah. Sorry. I can't say anything. This Saturday's I'm nervous. Right? All right. We got the length. We got the width. What does perimeter mean?
All the sides added together.
Okay, so there's 2 ways to set up perimeter. If you think about 2L plus, I think they are ranked, but the rankings really are just like nobody.
Utah? Yes. Utah.
That's like some random state. Like,
Utah beat Baylor by 2. and Baylor lost.
Tennessee hasn't won in
Oh, I know.
for 20 years, so it's a mind game. All right, we got 207.4 as our perimeter. Perimeter is the sum all the way around. You can do this the long way or the shorter, more intuitive way.
Shorter way.
The long way would be length plus width plus length plus width equals 207. So if you forget the intuitive way that I'm about to show you, fall back on the long way, which is just you're adding up all 4 sides to equal the perimeter, okay? And if you need to see where this intuitive way comes from, I'll even show you. I'm going to write in a thinner marker. You've got length plus width plus length plus width equals the 207.4. Well, what do you notice? There's 2 lengths and 2 widths, which is the more intuitive formula to use. In fact, I would just memorize it or start with the long way but then get to the intuitive way. Either way. What?
Question.
Yeah.
Like you look at some.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what you should?
Yes, wait, why do you have... Oh, well, you did. It's going to end up being correct, yeah. I'm not really sure where you got the plus W.
Oh, it's the.
Oh, you doubled. I see it now.
Yes,
Yeah, it's fine.
It's the length equation plus the width equation.
Gotcha. Then you doubled the
Parentheses,
whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
That's fine. All right, so let's look at this. How many variables do we have? How many equations do I have? No. Yeah, those are the same equation, right? So far I only have 1 equation, so I've got to get a second equation. You go back and you read it again. It says the length of a panel is 13.6 inches less than twice the width. I'm going to rewrite it right here. You don't have to if you don't want to. 13.6 inches less than twice the width. I want you to know where this comes from that I'm about to write. The length is 13.6 inches less than twice the width. Okay? If you write this out, length is what letter? L. Is means equals. Be careful. Right here. Be careful. What's twice the width mean? 2W. And they're saying it's 13.6 inches less than 2W, right? So you probably think 13.6 minus 2W. Is that what you initially think?
No.
I hope not. If you do, it's okay. That's why I'm here. The phrase less than is tricky. It means change the order of what you just read to subtract. So it'd be like if I said, let's just go with 13 inches less than the width. Let's go with that phrase. It's a lot easier to understand. If I said the length is 13 inches less than the width, wouldn't you take the width and subtract off 13 in order to tell me the answer? So the phrase less than means switch the order of what I just wrote. So it's actually 2W minus 13.6. If you write it the other way, you're going to get a negative, and then your answer is going to be wrong. Now that's only the phrase less than. Less than's a tricky phrase. All right, now look what I have. I have an equation for L, and I have a whole other equation with L in it. What should I do? Plug it in. I'm going to plug this in there. And I'm going to solve. Brody, the difference is that I already accounted for 2 widths, so that's what I was looking at yours. You put it all in there, double the whole thing, which is fine. All right, after you solve it, look up here and see if you got it right. Then you might want to make a note or highlight on your paper the equation for perimeter of a rectangle because it's going to come up in your homework. You can either use the long way and then get here, or you could start with 2L plus 2W. Now, we found the width to be 39.1 inches. How do I get the length? Just plug it in. Look, you have an equation for length right here. So plug in 39.1 and it will give you the length. Oh, yeah, it's $1. So the bad news is we're not done. The good news is that we are done with the more challenging problems. Let's go to the next slide.
Wait.
Yes, stop me.
Oh, wait, never mind.
Never mind. You sure?
Yeah.
Go ahead and read the next one. I have a feeling you can do it because it is exactly like the cell phone problem from 1.3 or 2. Might have been 1.2. It's that cell phone word problem. but we're not talking cell phones, we're talking about metro taxi fares. That is a dollar sign, by the way. I know, it's,
Into the five.
the taxi charges $2.50 for your initial pickup and then $2 per mile. Grayson's cab fare from the airport to his hotel was $32.50. So how many miles did he travel? Well, what variable do you think I'm going to pick? Read the question that it asked me to find. And I'm going to assign M to miles traveled. Now I'm going to write an equation to represent the scenario. What's the flat fee? It's a $2.50 pickup. That's your flat fee at first. And $2 per, which per means each or multiply, right? And how much did he pay? You see where this comes from?
Yes.
Now it's only one equation with one variable, so do we have enough to solve?
Yes.
Yes.
15.
I don't know how. I still got you for 5 minutes, so stay with me. Yeah, stay with me.
I'm paying attention.
Don't quit on me. There's not a lot for the last two. Does that problem make sense? I like those problems. I need more of those. But
Easy.
anytime it's like cell phone or gym membership or like Uber or something, it's or DoorDash, it's flat fee and then the rate. And the rate is where you're multiplying with the variable, okay? Look at the next slide. Look at the next slide. Zeros of linear functions. The purpose of this slide is to tell you that there are multiple vocab words for something you've been working with this whole time. X-intercepts, roots, solutions, and zeros. On your paper, if you want, draw an arrow to this and write the word root. Then come here and make note. There is x-intercepts, solutions, zeros, and roots. Now, the one that probably is hardest to remember is the word root. And I have a stupid, corny way to help you remember. Where do roots grow?
In the ground.
In the ground. Look at the graph. Think of the x-axis as the ground. It's where the graph is initially touching the ground, and the roots grow in the ground. It helps, I promise. So x-intercepts, solutions, zeros, roots, they all mean the same thing. Why did they come up with 4 names? I don't know. It's a little bougie. Go to the last slide. The last slide is saying find the zero of this function, which means solve for x, which means they're giving you y secretly is 0, because if I'm solving for the x-intercept, it's sitting on the x-axis, which means the y value is 0.
Which you
So-
just replaced that.
You have to be really careful here to know that they're saying, by the way, hey, y is 0, find x. Now, there's 2 ways to do it. The algebraic way would be let y equal 0, which means you have f of x. Right, that was the function. I'm going to change f of x, because that's y, to 0. And I'm going to solve. Add 9, divide by 5. Right? Which means it has the x-intercept of 9/5, comma 0. Because I plugged 0 in for y, I found x. The graphical solution would be enter in y1, like y equals. We've done this, so you may not even need to write these steps down, it's up to you. But you would enter in y1, you would hit zoom 6, you would look to see where it's crossing the x-axis. We wrote these down the other day. You'd say second calc. It's going to give you the option find the 0. It's going to ask you 3 questions. This should sound familiar. It's going to say give me a left bound, a right bound, and a guess. And then you hit enter, and it will spit out to you that it's 1.8, which is 9 divided by 5. I'll show you how to do that in the calculator tomorrow if you're rusty on it. We have practiced it already.
Are we going to
Sorry,